Okay, so welcome everybody to the Thomas St. Angelo Public Library of Cumberland's hosting of the Zoom author event with Barbara Deese. And this is the first time I think the author has known more people in the group than I do from the local area, but this is fun. So a while back, a book came in as a donation and I was looking at it and I'd never heard of it before, and it was by Barbara. And it looked interesting, and I love mysteries. And then I read the part on the back about Barbara, and it said that she was one of the first women air marshals in the US. I'm like, okay, I need to meet this person. I need to talk with her. She's going to be an interesting woman. So then I got all your books and read them, and we've had them on loan from other places, and we ordered a copy for ourselves at our library, and people have been getting to know you in this area. And we're just really excited to have you here tonight. So I'm going to have everybody on mute until the question and answer time. If you think of a question before we get to that part, just put it in the chat box if you'd like, and then we'll make sure we get to it when we're at the point of questioning and answering. But for now, I'm going to turn it over to Barbara. And we look forward to hearing about your writing process and some of your experiences and maybe what you're working on now. So thank you, Barbara.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Jeanette. Yeah, that Sky Marshal business was a long, long time ago. That's my only brush with the law, really, on the right side of the law. As for writing, I have been writing my whole adult life, but not mysteries, not at first. I wrote a lot for magazines, newspapers. I wrote short stories. I wrote 2 novels, but that first practice novel will never see the light of day. But I did learn a lot in the process, and I'm glad I did it. So what got me into mystery writing was a dark and stormy night. It happened about 20 years ago. I was with my book club. We've been around for 27 years. I helped start this book club, and we're still going strong. And we were at a cabin in Wisconsin. It is co-owned by one of our members. And it's this lovely setting, a sprawling old lodge along the cliff overlooking a waterfall. It's remote enough that at least 20 years ago, we didn't have TV or radio, and we barely had cell phone reception. So we didn't know a storm was rolling in until all of a sudden this huge crack of lightning hit the tree right outside of the room where we were sitting. And it plunged us into darkness. Somebody at the far end of the cabin screamed, and we found out later that she was afraid of the dark. So we lit candles and told, well, ghost stories, I guess. And on the way home the next day, I was riding with my longtime friend, Dorothy Olson. And we just couldn't stop talking about what a perfect setting that would be for a murder. We could imagine a bunch of book club women on retreat, finding a body below the waterfall after a big storm. And we pictured these women, not us exactly, but people that felt like us. And I suppose it was a lot more enthusiasm than sense that we got to the point of saying, let's write a mystery together. Now, she hadn't been writing before then. And so she was going to come up to speed with classes and workshops and the same things I had been doing. And we got so excited about the idea, we sent a message to the book club members and said, we're going to write a book together. It's going to be about this. If you want to get involved, join us by writing some little bios, some character sketches of characters you'd like us to fit in the book. And they did. It made it so much fun. We had to alter some of the stories of these characters a little bit, but I think it made the writing a lot richer to have them in there. I wanted to make sure that the people felt real. They would be fully fleshed out, not just, cardboard cutouts. And I wanted them to feel like real people. And as it turns out, that a lot of the reader feedback has been that reading the books feels like they're just hanging out with their friends. And so when they finish the book, some will write to me and say, please write another one. I miss the people. And that's one of the biggest compliments I feel I can get. So in writing this book that became Murder at Spirit Falls, I began with the character of Robin Bentley. I wanted her to be a survivor kind of person. And so I have her dealing with breast cancer. I guess it was a year or two after I started writing that I was then diagnosed. And so it was just a weird coincidence. I think it gives the book more authenticity because I got to go back in and rewrite some of the passages about it. But a really wonderful thing happened in the process, and that's that I wasn't afraid. I had done all my homework. I knew basically what Robin Bentley was dealing with, and it turned out it was what I was dealing with as well. So I just had to plug myself into that role. I knew how a strong woman would handle it. So I just faked it, as a strong woman, and I handled it. I also wanted Robin to have a flaw. And so I made her afraid of the dark. I mean, terrified of the dark. And then I started working backwards from that point. And in asking these questions and answering them, it turned out that the character of Robin Bentley then drove the plot. So in working backwards, I said, well, why was she afraid of the dark? And I could imagine that as a child, on more than one occasion, she was stuck in a dark place and told not to make a sound. It traumatized her enough that she carries that into adulthood. And then I asked myself, well, how would a strong woman deal with a crippling fear like that? So I made her a photographer, and I gave her a dark room in her basement. And as long as she has control of that light switch, she's cool. She has no fear of the dark. Well, writing those words, then I knew what had to happen by the end of the book. She had to be stuck in a dark place, and the only way she would get out of that alive was to overcome her fear or act in spite of it, however you want to look at that. I thought I'd read you the prologue, of Murder at Spirit Falls. It sets up not just the book, but kind of the series. And yes, I have my reading glasses handy. Perhaps we had tempted fate by calling ourselves no ordinary women, as if the five of us were a fleet of superwomen able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. Arriving at the cabin, our expectations were simple: camaraderie, laughter, and good food, requirements for any slumber party. And because of our love of books, we knew we were in for many lively discussions about what we'd been reading. The almost century-old hunting lodge sat on 150 acres of lush Wisconsin woodland, half a mile from a gravel road, and remote enough, remote enough for us to shed the restraints of city living, hike in the woods, take moonlight walks, and ditch our bathing suits to sit under the waterfall. For our last 3 retreats, we'd chosen a thematic book: A Walk in the Woods, Woodswoman, and In the Lake of the Woods. This year, Foxy tried to sneak in a grisly murder mystery, but we vetoed it in favor of Thoreau's Walden and declared a year-long moratorium on mysteries. That's what gave it such irony, because by Monday morning, we had a pretty good inkling we were up to our bifocals in a mystery, for real. So there are 4 books. Excuse me, I've got allergies. I shouldn't have to have allergies without there being green grass out there, but I do. So all 4 books so far and the one in progress are set in Minnesota and Wisconsin. The 5 women of the book club live in the Twin Cities. They form the backbone of the series. And like my friends, like the people I know, they're in their 50s and have been through some tough stuff. But they really get the thing about friendship, that they need to get together. They need to eat and talk and laugh together. And it's very healing for them. And it's that sense that I wanted to capture about my own book club. So Dorothy, in the process of writing this book, her husband was diagnosed with dementia. So this was the tough thing she had to deal with. He lived several years until he passed away. And she was so consumed by what all that entailed that we had to make the tough decision that she wouldn't be able to write the sequels with me. I know she would have liked to, because we had so much fun working on it, but she just didn't have the bandwidth to do it all. And it's okay, we're still friends, and she's been supportive of the project, but I did write the sequels on my own. I found the publisher and have done the marketing on my own. It became really apparent early on that, excuse me, that with 5 protagonists, it would be too hard for the reader to have them all have an equal role in all of the books. So even though they're all 5 women appear in all of the books, each book one of them takes a more central role. So in Murder at Spirit Falls, it's Robin. It's her cabin where much of the action takes place. And in Murder at Spirit Falls, we get to know her background. Now move on to book 2, which is Spirited Away. That book, the more central character is Kate, Catherine Running Wolf. And that's a character that Dorothy developed for the first book. Kate is not just an animal lover, she's kind of an animal maniac. And she also has this keen sense of intuition. Some might call it the sight. I have started thinking of it more as a knowing, but she manages to help figure out some aspects of the plot in each book. Spirited Away begins in Meadow Point Manor. It's a fictitious senior living community in the western suburbs of Minneapolis. Both Robin's and Kate's mothers live in that building. And one of them goes to visit her mother, and Ira Dudley, one of the residents, comes up to her and says, "Help me. My son is missing and nobody believes me." Well, the reason some people don't believe her is that she's 96 years old. She sets a place at the table for her long dead husband. But the thing is, the women believed her, and her son, Winston, 70 years old, has indeed gone missing. And so they get together and help figure out what's going on. Now, as I started writing this, I haven't had it happen to me before or since then, but these people the characters started popping up in my mind, and they were clamoring all over each other to tell me their stories and wanting me to write them down. I always thought it was a little pretentious when writers told me that they just took dictation from their characters, but it happened in this book. Well, one of the characters that popped up was my mom, Daisy. She had died a few years earlier, and I felt like she really wanted to be in this book. And as it turned out, she actually was necessary for the plot. for this reason. The missing man, Winston, has had his granddaughter, Kiki, living with him. And she's just lost. I mean, her grandpa's gone. What is she supposed to do about staying on in that house? And the police aren't going to do anything, because if a 70-year-old man goes missing and he's of sound mind, well, the police don't have anything to do with that. So I got to thinking about how my mom, a junior high teacher her whole adult life, would have that one student or maybe more each year that would be a little lost. And so I thought, if I write Daisy into this book, and her name is the same in real life and in the book, then she can put her arm around this Kiki, take her under her wing and help her through this. Book 3 is Forgotten Spirits, and that's Foxy's story. It starts out with Foxy being stalked near her neighborhood in St. Paul. And then she finds out that an old friend of hers from her Las Vegas days has died mysteriously. And she has reason to believe that she might be next. She goes into a panic. She jumps in the car and drives up to her brother's resort in Ely. But trouble follows her, and then a blizzard moves in. She has not told her friends at home what's going on at all. And so it's up to them to figure out what's happened to Foxy. Book 4, Spirits of Pepin. That is focusing more on Louise. She, excuse me, she has a cabin cruiser in the marina at Red Wing. And she has invited her book club to come for the weekend. They are motoring from Red Wing to Lake City on Lake Pepin. It's really just a widening. I suppose I'm talking to Wisconsin people. You know, it's a widening of the Mississippi River, not a true lake. But they're motoring from Red Wing to Lake City, where they'll spend the night. And they see this sailboat meandering all over. And Louise knows enough about sailing. She says, that boat is in trouble. So they go over and check it out. And sure enough, there is a dead body on board. And they call for help. Well, that would be the end of the story, really, or should have been. But as Louise is thinking back on it, she thinks that when they boarded that boat to check things out, they might have just destroyed evidence of foul play. So she convinces her friends that they need to, they really are responsible to help find the truth of that story. Lake Pepin is not only beautiful for anybody who has been there, you know, it's gorgeous scenery. It's also got some really interesting history. And like the St. James Hotel being haunted in Red Wing, and many of the little towns around the lake have ghost stories attached to them. And then there's the sinking of the Seawing ferry about 100 years ago, where almost 100 people perished. So I had to write in this character, Simon. He's a ghost hunter, and he has come on the anniversary of the sinking of the Seawing ferry to do a paranormal investigation. And he ropes 2 of the women into helping him in this investigation, and things do not go well. I am working on book number 5. I'm about halfway done. And it will be titled An Uninvited Spirit. And that will be Grace's story. Do I have time to do a maybe 2-minute reading from that, Jeanette? Oh, you're muted. Okay. Okay. Grace was startled by a loud rustling. She swung full circle in the middle of the leaves she'd just raked into pyramids, and seeing nothing to explain the noise, wiped her sleeve across her forehead. That's when she saw the snow white squirrel, tail twitching, regarding her from the tree trunk. A voice spoke, "Our little ghost squirrel." Grace let out a yip and clutched her chest. "Cute, isn't he?" The voice came again as a figure stepped from behind the massive oak. "Didn't mean to scare you," the woman said. "I'm Annie. Me and my sister live across the street." She jerked her thumb toward the ivy-covered bungalow. "I'm Grace." Grace reached out, her heart still pounding. Annie's handshake was firm. Grace guessed her to be in her mid-70s, a couple decades older than she was. "Me and Emma watched you moving in. I'd have come earlier with a pie or cookies, but Emma said I was just making an excuse to snoop." "I'm glad you stopped by," Grace said, catching her equilibrium. "I don't know how you do it, moving while you're still working. You married?" "Almost 33 years. "I'm guessing those two fellows who helped you move are your kids." She nodded. "Our sons are all grown up now." Empty nesters then," Annie said. "I guess." Grace was still getting used to thinking of herself that way, but indeed she and Fred had created a home more than big enough to raise their young, then watch their fledglings, one after another, drive off actually. The analogy ended there, since she doubted that avian offspring returned to the nest, dragging with them bags of laundry and raiding their parents' refrigerator. Annie stuck her hands in her pockets. "Seen anything weird yet?" "You mean besides you?" Grace wanted to say. "What do you mean?" "At your house, lights going off and on, stuff moving around." Grace shook her head. Annie's laugh ended in a wheezy cough. "I thought someone would have told you about the ghost." So after that little introduction, Grace does start noticing some strange goings on in her house. And her friends help her research a little bit about the former residents, the former owners of the house. And she finds out disturbing enough details that Grace decides she needs to hire a psychic to come in. So you might have noticed that spirit is in all the titles. And I do write some elements of the supernatural in each one, but I do it in with blurred lines. The reason being, I don't even know what to make of some of those things that I've experienced, and certainly the things I've heard about. So I like to do the same favor to my readers, to let you all make up your mind whether this is a true paranormal experience or whether there's some scientific explanation. Jeanette, I think you wanted me to talk about what is next. There will be 5 books in this series at least. It's a natural place to end it. 5 women, five books. But who knows? I could do some spin-offs on some of the secondary characters. But I'm starting to get excited about an idea of a new series that would not have 5 protagonists, because that's been a little unwieldy. Me keeping track of all of their histories from book to book. But the other thing that has been hard is, I call it the Jessica Fletcher syndrome, that anybody who lives in Cabot Cove, sooner or later, anybody who knows Jessica Fletcher in that series is either going to be murdered or they're going to be the murderer. And it becomes just a little too hard to believe. So I don't want to kind of go too far in that direction. But I am thinking about maybe 2 retired women related to each other, sisters-in-law, cousins, something like that, who can get involved in not the same shenanigans, but helping to solve some mysteries. So I don't know what else you'd like me to address, but I'm certainly ready for questions if you have them.
How about we start with the 3 questions that are already in the chat, and then people can listen to those answers, and then I'll unmute everybody, and we can take other questions as well. But do you see those, Barbara, the questions?
I just popped them up, yes.
Okay.
Has the pandemic impacted my writing schedule or my ability to focus? Yes and yes. It's so easy to just feel isolated, and it delightful at times. Oh, good, I can finally have just a chunk of time to sit and write. And I think it would be ideal, except suddenly my inspiration is gone. And I don't know why that's happening, but I've talked to so many other writers who have been having the same problem. The creativity just goes out the window for some reason. But maybe it'll turn out that a lot of good thought has gone on during this last year that will make the writing better when I really jump back into it with both feet. And as the weather's warming up, it's feeling like spring again almost. And I feel like maybe I'm getting back into a heavier writing schedule. So ability to focus. Yeah, I guess I addressed both of those. Barbara, will you ever add other book club members to the No Ordinary Women series? You know, that has been a possibility I've thought. And yet then I'm coming up with 6 people to keep track of. So would somebody in the book club have to die to make room for another? That has occurred to me. Don't have an answer. Okay, Timmy, do you see yourself incorporating the pandemic in future writing? I'm actually incorporating it into book 5 in a different way. I have decided, so there's a health crisis with the husband of one of the members. And instead of having it be COVID, I'm just having it be an awful flu season that she can't visit her husband in the hospital because there's a flu bug that's really ravaging the hospital. And I'm using that partly because that puts her alone, makes her more vulnerable, and also gives her time to go sleuthing around for what she needs to do. Okay, do you enjoy the hobbies of making jewelry, photography, sailing? Oh, yes, I have made dichroic glass jewelry for some time. Very much enjoyed that. Photography, I'm not a good photographer. I took my daughter on a trip a few years ago and she fired me as the photographer. I don't know what I did that was so awful, but I didn't do anything very good either. So let's see. Sailing, my husband and I had a boat in a leaseback fleet in the Bahamas many years ago. And it actually was something that happened on my first trip down there on his sailboat that started the plot in Spirits of Pepin. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? You got everyone muted.
There's a question Victoria wrote in. Do you see it where it says, what is your writing process?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I do now. I am not that disciplined to set a specific time of each day. I have tried working from an outline, but as it As it has turned out, I have deviated enough from the outline that I've written that I wondered why I did it in the first place. A lot of writers refer to it as plotters versus pantsers, and I'm a pantser, a seat of the pants kind of writer. I am often surprised by the endings of my own stories and have changed the bad guy in the process of writing the books. So brainstorm and rewrite. I do that. And I have found it incredibly helpful to have people to bounce ideas off of. As I say, I had a lot of fun in the first book brainstorming with my friend, but it also slows down the process if you brainstorm too much, I've found out. I'm in a writer's group, and that's really helpful in the writing process. And they also keep me accountable. We decide that before each meeting, we'll send each other X number of pages. And so that keeps me going. But I think there are different phases in the writing process. And one is just thinking about it a lot, doing a lot of research. The actual writing is maybe a smaller percentage than the research and thinking, and just getting excited about it, figuring out all the little twists and turns in my head before I actually sit down and write it. Okay. Experiences of getting published. Well, okay. So the book was finished, and I did not want, I was 62 when this first book was published. I didn't want to take 5 years or more to find an agent who would find a publisher, and it would be tedious. So let's see, I just want to read that question again. Okay, my experience is getting a publisher. So I wasn't sure where to begin. I hadn't quite started researching smaller presses where you didn't need an agent, and I really didn't want to try self-publishing. Well, somebody in my writers group, Wally, called me one day and said, I just got a contract from North Star Press in St. Cloud, and they seem kind of sketchy. Would you go with me as another pair of eyes and ears? Because his wife was working and she couldn't go. I said, sure. Well, we drove up there and we got a little lost, and we got onto dirt roads, and he kept saying, I think we're in the wrong place here. This just doesn't look like a publisher would be here. And we drove past the place a couple times before we said, oh yeah, it must be that pole barn. So we got out of the car, heading into the pole barn, and goats came at us from 2 directions and they're nibbling at our clothes. And he said, why don't you just wait there? This is a little sketchy. So he went up and, peered through the window and goes, oh my gosh, there's somebody in there. Well, we went in, and they were a weird bunch. They sat in a circle with their backs to us as we sat in the middle, and they're talking to us and working on their computers. And it was just the oddest experience. But they didn't know what they were doing. And they were lovely people. They were just real odd. And by the time Wally had asked them all his questions and decided to sign the contract, I said, do you have a couple minutes for me to pitch my idea? I said, sure. And I did. And they said, send us the first few chapters. And I did. And they said, you're going to be our 50th of 50 books we're publishing this year. So it was easy, but it was bizarre. Okay. Oh, hi, Anne from Orchard Lake, my old neighborhood. What was it like when you had to find, oh, okay, I think that's pretty much the same answer. Is that okay, Anne? think I answered both questions.
So Barbara, what are you reading now?
Share.
What kind of books do you like to read?
Oh, well, I read just about anything, and I'm in two book clubs, a neighborhood book club and this book club that started 27 years ago. And so I usually have one as a print book and one as an audio, so that I can get them both read during the month. I love mysteries, of course. But I just read Nomad Land, which was one of the more depressing books I've read, but worth reading. I do like some historical fiction. I like suspense, thrillers. I used to read a lot of like spy books. And now I might again, because we're kind of getting back to that era, I think. One of my favorite mystery authors is Anne George, and she writes the Southern Sisters mysteries, and they're just fun. They're just candy to me. So I like to put in one of those more fun books in between the heavier books. I also love Jodi Picoult because she can tell a story from every different angle and really gets the different characters. Sharon McCrum, who writes Appalachian Mysteries. And you can tell she just loves the people she writes about, even the dark-hearted ones. So I enjoy that.
Have you read St. Dale yet?
I have not, Tim. Yeah, that's...
It turned me on to NASCAR, I gotta tell you. It shocked the heck out of me, but her heart is so big when she writes people. It's just amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Can you say
Yes,
the
and
name
somebody
of
writes
that book
Unfortunate
again?
and George.
St. Dale? St. Dale, as in St. Paul, and Dale is D-A-L-E.
Thanks.
By Sharon McCrum.
By Sharon McCrum, who is an amazing author.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Any other comments, questions? Anne said, no, I did read that one. I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm curious to know what. Go
ahead.
Go ahead. I would like to know what mystery authors you readers have gotten into.
You could type your answer into the chat room, or we could take turns saying them.
Yeah.
I'll
maybe
start.
This is an awkward format.
Yeah, I'll have to say though that one of the authors I've enjoyed lately, well, for a long time, is David Housewright. And time for a plug. He's our next author event that's going to be happening through the Thomas St. Angelo Public Library of Cumberland on March 11th. He will be presenting a Zoom author event. And so we're looking forward to that. And that kind of closes out a 3 author series of mystery writing that we've hosted here at the library. So we're looking forward to talking with him, hearing about the same kind of questions that Barbara's addressed tonight about where he gets his inspiration and his writing process, and you know, what he's working on next. And so if you're interested in tuning into that, me know. Just call the library or email us. And that again was on March 11th at 6:30 p.m. I also like Louise Penny, and I was just alerted the other day by a coworker that she's working on a new novel with Hillary Clinton. So that might be kind of interesting.
Yep. It's a thriller about a Secretary of State. Yep. I also, if I may, I wanted to put in a plug for the anthology that Sisters in Crime has published. And I'm one of the editors on there. And so is Timya, who's also on here. But it's Minnesota Not So Nice, 18 Tales of Bad Behavior.
I love that title.
Yep. I understand that in many parts of the country think Minnesota Nice is actually passive aggression. So I don't want to claim that thing.
Oh, we have another question, or two more questions.
Okay. Oh, afraid of the dark moments. Yes, yes. So, you know, when I said that I don't know which side of the fence to fall on with paranormal stuff, dark definitely has something to do with it. If I'm, let's say I'm sleeping, I'm alone in the house, and it's 3 a.m, and I think I hear the front door opening, and I go to check on it and think I might have seen something out of the corner of my eye, I definitely can believe it's a ghost. I can definitely be afraid of the dark. Absolutely. Also read First of Wendy Webb's After the Zoom meeting. Oh yeah, that was great. Oh yes. And my sister wants you to know that she never locked me in a closet. Okay.
Ooh. I think there's a story there.
Yeah. She's only denying one thing. Who knows what else she did? It's funny. Did you have other questions, Jeanette?
I guess the only other thing I was wondering is someone mentioned, you know, you're writing and during the pandemic, but with or without a pandemic, what besides reading really replenishes you or nourishes you? Wendy addressed that question in the last Zoom event we had too. So what do you do to get yourself going again or feel full again?
Well, I think sometimes when I'm in the active writing phase and I'm pretty intense about it, I don't do much reading. And then I feel depleted and have to read more. It's just food for a writer. Talking to people has been really important, more than ever during the pandemic. And so I have started doing a lot of Zoom meetings with people. And I've pretty much figured out that there are people that take energy and people that give energy. And I'm starting to figure out who those people are and to reach out to the people that are energizing to me. I do a lot of good thinking when I walk. We're close to the Minnesota River. And so I can just walk down the hill and walk along there. And somehow or another, being in the woods it just fills my soul. And I can think through plot points and yeah, just being in nature. It's real important to me.
Right. Well, judging by the people that I know that have signed up for tonight, you're kind of talking to the choir there. We're all very grateful about our Wisconsin woods here and lakes, and familiar with Minnesota as well. And so that makes a lot of sense to all of us, I'm sure.
And I was telling you before this officially started that I've been having a 2-person book club with my 11-year-old granddaughter, and that also has really sparked creativity. She's a smart little girl who comes up with some of the greatest insights, and just introducing a kid to reading and discussing books has been hugely energizing to me.
Yeah, kids will bring you through.
Yep.
That's right.
Any other questions from our audience? Oh.
Where are my books at? Okay. You can get them Barnes & Noble, Amazon, online, in some bookstores. If you can't find them in a bookstore close to you, ask them to order them. We need to keep our local bookstores alive. They're so, I don't want to be dependent on Amazon, although I go there. I buy things there, and my books are there, so I'm not going to badmouth them, but I'd hate for them to take over all of the wonderful bookstores, and libraries are so important. I don't know what we'd do without them. Yeah, but Once Upon a Crime, Timya, yeah, they do online sales. That if you haven't been there, it's a nationally known bookstore in Minneapolis. It's just packed full of books, and they will order anything you want.
And ship them.
They're wonderful. And ship them, right? Yeah.
And of course, check out your local, oops. I was just going to say, check out your local library too. I mean, if you don't want to own the book. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you, Barbara. And
I am not picking.
Oh, go ahead. You go.
Oh, no, thank you so much for doing this. It's really important for us local authors to feel supported by the librarians, and so appreciate it. Everybody for showing up tonight. It means a lot to me.
It's been a lot of fun, and we really appreciate hearing about your process and what, every author has their own style and their own voice to be heard. And we really appreciate learning more about you, and we'll look forward to your next book and maybe a different kind of series too. That's exciting to hear about.
Thank you so much. It was
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Barb.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeanette.
You bet.
Did a great job, Jeanette.
Thanks. And I'll be emailing you. We'll keep in touch.
I'd love that. Thank you.
Okay.
Night,
Bye-bye.
Barb. Thank you.
Night.
Bye.
Night.
Tomorrow.
Yeah. See you tomorrow.
Yeah.